to have all of them here and what promises to be a power pack session. Please give them all a very warm welcome. Thank you, Gaurav, for such a kind and elaborate introduction, and I'm really grateful for that. So, even before we start the panel, I would like to throw in some numbers like all the MBAs do. So, in last 5 years, India has produced around 9,300 startups, and 1,300 of them were just last year. We have given world 24 unicorns, and 7 of them were produced just last year. India is known to be the third, most vibrant startup ecosystem in the world today after China and US. But there is a gap. When India produces those 24 unicorns, China and US produces 200. So this is the gap. And now my question to the panel is India poised to bridge that gap? Have we reached that inflection point where we will start accelerating to bridge that gap? Ankur, I would like to start with you and give your opening comments, and maybe you can also share your nearby journey with it. We have both the social capital and the infrastructure to have a vibrant startup ecosystem.
I believe so, and I think more. It's not that we lacked it in a way that couldn't have helped us so far, but what I feel is that there is conviction in the mindset of individuals that I can also now do it, whether with the government or despite the government, or with the infrastructure or despite the infrastructure. And there are enough cases where people have literally taken the bull by its horns and saying, now, if this is not available for me as a country, I will make this happen because I have the wherewithal and the conviction to make that happen. And OYO is a great story around that.
So, coming to Rohit. So, if one thing has scaled up in India, like if only one startup has scaled up in India, it's OYO that way.
So great opportunity, and a lot has to mature yet. A lot has to mature. He's absolutely right, because we don't have that mindset ab initio in our country to take those kind of plunges and support that kind of environment and industry.
But as I observed that there are a lot of new organic market, billion-dollar market, which are created in India very often. Like you have e-commerce, re-commerce, hyperlocal, hospitality. You have these markets which are naturally generated. So, Rohit, my question to you is that do we see a Tesla coming up in India, or do we see a 100 OYO scaling up to $100 billion? Like, because this it's just to make you happy.
I'll refer to the food panel discussion. Aapke muh mein ghee shakkar. I hope what you say comes true. I'll be personally very grateful for that.
So you can write the check for the acceleration center.
But I think, do I see a Tesla coming out of India? Honest answer, no. Right? Not for some time. But services-led markets, deep consumer demand-led markets. So, for example, as a very strange paradox, I was talking to someone. I said, one of the biggest opportunity creators in India for new businesses have been bad traffic. Okay? It's just a godsend for new businesses, because everyone wants everything at home. And with that core assumption and payment systems and internet growing and mobile growing, you suddenly disrupted almost all real estate based industries. Almost all. So for example, if I were to bet $1 in healthcare today in India, I will bet on healthcare at home. Home health. It's just so painful to get out and go somewhere and park your car and do stuff. So service-led markets will become very large and very deep. Product-led markets still, I think Ankit will be probably better positioned to answer this question, but from my vantage point, I still see some struggle there.
We can have some disagreement in the panel also.
Building a Tesla out of India.
Yeah, in the Indian culture, if you will, and that's bound to happen and bound to change.
It's very interesting because this economic survey, even Subbu has written about this, that India, Krishna Murthy Subramanian, he's a professor. So
you Niti Ayog and stuff, right? So you may just call these people, but हमारे लिए वो Anyway,
So he has also mentioned.
so what
you
did
know,
Mr. Subramanian say?
Mr. Subramaniam said that Subbu, yeah, he said that the trust as the one of the key impediments which we as a society have to cross to actually reach to this 5 trillion economy.
I have a fascinating anecdote, and I never forget this. So Ola, everyone knows of Ola. At least my dad thought about this. And I was like, okay, first up, I hope your parents are having a happy marriage, but is there a way that I can help? And I was a consultant back then. I was thoroughly enjoying my time for the first time getting real life experience. And in 2009, I became an entrepreneur. And back then, becoming an entrepreneur was nearly not as cool or sexy as it is today. Now, it just essentially meant that most likely you didn't get a job out of college, and that's why you started up on your own. No disrespect meant to anyone who starts up after Babson. And after 10 years, I stand here today as an absolute irrational optimist saying that that time has come to the question that you asked, Mrigank. I feel what's happened in India that has already happened in US and China is that we've seen a round and a wave of first-time entrepreneurs that started post-liberalization that have done exceedingly well for themselves and are now posed as both investors and mentors and community builders in the entire ecosystem. So what is happening now is entrepreneurship is being encouraged by people who had entrepreneurship as an experience for the last 20 years, have done exceedingly well, have stories to tell. There is massive survivorship bias, yes, but these are fascinating stories that we are getting to live. And I feel that there is an entire generation that is now being encouraged to think of it as a legitimate profession that could also get you married as a biodata point, and is not just something cool. It is genuinely a way to add value and create wealth, not just for yourself, but for stakeholders. And I think the entire 2015 oddish change around the internet penetration through Reliance Jio made it possible for literally every Indian to be touched by technology in ways that never happened before. So I stand here as a proud representative of the Indian startup ecosystem, just as my other panelists, and I genuinely believe because of this first run of success that's happened, we're now going to witness several decades of the startup industry becoming, perhaps in my opinion, the same role that the IT industry played post-liberalization for 30 odd years, where it was the key job producing phenomena. I see the startup industry doing that in India.
So you are saying we have both the social capital and the infrastructure to have a vibrant startup ecosystem.
I believe so.
It's about access to capital. Like, yes, we have $60 billion parked in the country to be invested, and last year we invested $4.4 billion in different startups. But in my opinion, as when I run the accelerator, I find that early stage access to capital is really limited. What are your views on that?
Look, I think there's one startup out of India which nobody talks about, which is the most well-funded startup in the world. It's Jio.
Really?
Check the balance sheet, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? It's public, right? It's the most phenomenal startup to emerge, which has completely disrupted an existing industry, completely upside down. And that's fascinating how that was done. Now, since it came from an established business house, nobody talks about it, right?
It has access to capital. What about the other people who don't?
So access to capital is not the problem anymore. Look, also these are phases. So the world over the last 10-15 years has seen a cycle of cheap capital available globally, which is unprecedented for the last 50 years, right? And that cycle is slowing down right now a little bit. So we have to be cautious about extrapolating the last 10 years trend into the future. Having said that, if I continue to accept the fact that that will continue for some more time, Japan will have negative yields, US will continue to do well, because for the last 3 years, everybody's talking about that when will US topple over? It's almost like when rather than whether. And it hasn't done that. The economy has gone from strength to strength, and that's really benefited other markets in terms of access to capital. Access to capital is today not available so much to the idea as it to the person. That's a very big change that happened. Ideas are everywhere. People who can execute those ideas and get meaningful returns on capital are very few. So for those people, and Their profile sketches were starting to emerge on what characteristics those people possess. Capital is not a constraint anymore.
So, absolutely. So, Ankit, like I have been spending a lot of time in Ministry of Civil Aviation for past 3 years. So working on the regulations and not working on
Well, I'm sitting between two guys who fly drones, right?
Try to implementation was a bit of a problem there. Like the mindset was
that, yeah. As well as, and enforcement in India is really brilliant. Like there is no enforcement. So we have a law that clamps it down, but they fly in every wedding out there. Every wedding out there. You're not a wedding photographer anymore if you don't have a drone flying for the wedding. So that's how enforcement is in India.
They have to, but they don't.
Yeah, that's enforcement, right?
So, Ankur, I have to ask this question to you. What is let the build up be, yes. So what is that unsolvable challenge you are secretly working on?
I have no idea, which is why it's unsolvable. I have no idea. The reference that Mrugank's making is after I stepped down as the CEO of my startup, I was deciding on what to do for the next decade, and I've consciously chosen that whatever idea I do has to have a very high probability of failure. Otherwise, it's not worth it. So I don't know. I'm okay.
We can
with
discuss.
That. Yeah, well, yeah.
I have a lot of them.
Great. Okay. I am sure. I'm seeking
Take
it.
my idea. I'm not using it.
Last panel discussion, I was told by both of you that implementation is the key. I remember that. So, what about the culture, like overall, like in terms of although we have discussed. You need my mic.
Failed startups. I had a question about, I think the core question is starting up again, more than starting up, because a lot of the startups, as we know, fail. And Ankit, you spoke about the ecosystem for that. I wanted to know, as students, we hear a lot of talk around passion and following your passion, and then we are here in the MBA trying to find what it is. Can each one of you share one instance where you didn't follow your passion but followed an opportunity in your careers and then it became a passion? And is it possible, in your opinion, that something is a genuine opportunity and your pragmatic self feels that it's worth pursuing, and then you feel that you will develop the passion for it?
So, my take is following your passion is the most overrated advice. Right? It is just sounds very great and nice, and so people spew it all the time incessantly, right? I think it's led to fairly, in India at least, led to strong sense of entitlement, right? As if solve. So nobody wants to start. Everyone wants to end. If I'm not solving like India's like space problem right now, I might as well die, right? So there is a little bit of a correction needed there in terms of every success story was 5 years in the making at least, right? That realization is very key. At least I come from a very middle class background where we worked our way up and I know no other way. So maybe it's my own limitation. But I personally am much more of an opportunist. Put me in a situation, I'll try to get the best out of it.
I think, overall, there is always pain in what you're doing, right? I mean, you have to genuinely, you're not always solving the world's biggest problem. Sometimes you're just solving shitty people problems, or, technology is stuck and you have no idea where it's going to go. And, you don't want to spend all your days in just building that one circuit, right? So you have to find that motivation within yourself. A little bit of where passion helps is that if you like what you're doing, and the bigger picture, you basically stick around doing it. That's where passion helps. Otherwise, you don't, stick around doing that same thing. That's all.
I'd say my short answer is, I use passion as a eligibility, but not as a selection criteria. So whatever I select has to be driven by its market size. Blanket. That's it. It has to be a big opportunity because at least I feel that my time needs to go towards a big opportunity. And then I will layer on my passion to make it eligible or not, but my selection will never be driven by my passion. I couldn't agree more with Rohit that when you given the advice, scratch your own itch. Who cares about your itch, right? It's your itch. So why would I the right question is how many people are itching with the same problem, and are they itching enough so as to be willing to pay for that to be solved? And if that answer is nowhere close, then no, my passion is just going to make my itch seem far bigger than what it is.
That's so true. That's so true. It has to be large enough. Without that, there's no.
So I think it's all about passionately, finding opportunities and solving them.